Okay, so yesterday we left off talking about how to do specifically a type, I changed it to type 1 or 2. Type 2 is what?
Invisible.
Type 1 is method C, which is, and then we're going to use form D, which is non-aqueous. Why was I using non-aqueous?
Most sensitive on type 2.
Most sensitive for type 2. All right, so we started with cleaning it using a solvent remover. Let's see, I'm not going to spray it on there because it'll flood the crack. Allow it to dry, the cleaner to dry. Then we're going to apply the penetrant to the area being inspected. With this stuff, the application methods, brush, dip, spray, pour. Allow the penetrant to sit for 10 to 30 minutes, which is a dwell time. And we're going to select a longer time if we're looking for tighter, smaller cracks, and a shorter time if they're a little bit wider, and that's going to flow in there easier. So, all right, so it's been sitting there. Our penetrant's been sitting there. Do we let it dry, the penetrant?
No.
Now, if it dried, you don't screw it up. All right, so let's see. Larger cracks or warm parts. Let's see. Step 5, let's see. Now what?
Inspect.
Apply the dissolving. Oh.
So this whole part's just covered with dye of some sort, either red, visible, or fluorescent. So yeah, don't get in the tank and start looking. Well, the whole thing's around. So we're going to remove the penetrant. This is where people who don't know screw up the most. Because really, you can kind of fake your way through all of this, right? You open up that little kit. There we go. Open that little kit. I mean, how hard is that? We don't have to read the directions. We're going to spray some of this on the part and clean it, which you shouldn't have, but they did. Then they wait a little while, then they spray some of this penetrant on. And they wait a little while. So far, things are going okay. It's not correct, but it's well good enough. Now the whole thing, if you're using this, it's going to be red. So I got to get the red off. So what do?
Spray it off.
Yeah, they grab this bag. Yeah, well, it worked once, it worked twice. So just take that and spray it real well and wash it all down till all the red goes away.
Sweet.
Then you put some developer on it, and guess what?
There's no cracks.
There's no cracks. Because what happened to the penetrant?
You got cleaned off.
You washed it all out real nice. And I've been in that situation a couple times. I told somebody something was cracked, and they said, no, it's not. And I said, want me to prove it? And they said, no, I'll do it myself. Came back, and I'm like, and they said, see, I told you it wasn't cracked. I'm like, but it is. How about show me how you did that? And then inevitably, they always do the same thing. Just wash it all out. It's like, well, okay, now we have 2 lessons. One, how to do this. All right, so let's see. Remove penetrant. So how, now remember, we're using a solvent-based method C. So how are we going to remove it?
Dry, wet, dry.
So we're going to do wipe only. Wipe only with a clean rag. Do not spray cleaner remover. That will not work out. We're going to use the dry, wet, dry method. So we're going to start with a lint-free is best, because when you get lint stuff in the black light, it just reflects everywhere. So lint-free cloth, and I like to use smaller cloths because you always want a clean area. So fold it up a bunch to get it, depending on what you're doing. Wipe. Okay, now that part's bad. Find a new part. Wipe. And we're going to keep wiping. And I say, I've never seen this anywhere. This is where your inspection starts, right here. So right there, when you start to remove, inspection starts. I'm going to put that in. Inspection starts. Right there. Why? Because you're watching what you're doing. If you wipe something and it's all clean, but then it starts to suddenly magically reappear, guess what you have? A discontinuity. You guys say, I've been wiping the same spot for an hour and it just keeps coming out, but it's getting better. It's almost done. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So dry, and so you're gonna wipe it with a dry cloth until you're getting everything you can with the dry. Then we're going to use, I'm sorry, did I? Yeah, dry. Then wet, so we're going to take a new cloth, spray a little bit of cleaner on it. It should not be dripping or soaking, it's just damp. We do the same thing, wipe, fold it, new section, wipe, till it comes off clean. Then we should use another dry one. It usually only takes 1 or 2 wipes, wipe with the dry, we're done. So dry, wet, dry. Then we're going to next,
Developer.
apply developer. You don't need the developer if you can see an indication. If it's already jumping out at you and it's rejectable, you put developer on if you feel like it, but if it's already there, you can see it and it's there, it's like, well, why waste the time? But if you don't see anything, then you have to apply the developer. Of course, the instructions don't say that, I'm just telling you. Yeah.
A question that's maybe a little bit off topic, but can you do any type of developer type of thing with an engine running with when you put some type of dye in the oil or something to find an oil leak? Like, is there a similar process to?
Actually, yes and no. It uses this stuff. So it is off topic, but it's funny. It's almost applicable. So if you were trying to find a leak, an oil leak, one of the problems with finding oil leaks in airplanes, number one, if an aircraft engine leaks any kind of oil, most owners go nuts over that. They don't want any leaks whatsoever. So you will be chasing a lot of leaks. It's not like, oh, it's okay. It's not okay. They don't like it. So you're gonna be looking for leaks. I have watched leaks start at the back of an engine, drip, and run all the way up to a running propeller, and then go out the propeller and off, and start in the back of the engine. So with that prop, wind, good luck. It is so difficult to find leaks in aircraft. So you start by cleaning the entire engine off really well, and then you run it for a little bit, and then see if you can see where the source of the leak came from. But if you can't, then there's some dye that you can put in that will, it's easier to do this if the engine oil is dirty, but if it's clean oil, good luck. There's some dye you can put in it that makes it fluorescence, so you can use a black light and chase it down. But what a lot of people do is they use the Form D, the non-aqueous developer, clean the engine, spray it with developer, and then run the engine, and the oil leaves a mark in the developer. So it works good for that. Without the fluorescent, yeah.
Is that contaminating the oil too?
It's on the outside of the engine.
Yeah, no, I'm saying without contamination.
Oh, yeah.
Your dye, the dye you would have to change oil.
Okay, so we're gonna apply developer. So let me see. So type 2 must use 4. Yeah, 4. That's it. Whoa. Must use Form D, non-aqueous, because Form D is the most sensitive and type 2 is the least sensitive. Type 2 is least. The least. So in other words, if you're using the visible type 2, it's so bad that the only chance of doing anything is to use the very best developer they make. Another way of saying it. Let's see, Form D. So Form D is the non-aqueous aerosol spray. Let me see. Do not use too much. That's the one mistake everybody seems to make. You're not painting the part. You want a light dusting. So I came up with a formula the other day with you guys. Move the candor exactly where you think you need it, and then double the distance, and then you'll be too close. And then give it a light, and then what I do is I just do a dust coat, not like I'm painting. I mean, because when you're painting, it's like this. a dust coat. And it kind of falls on the part, and I'll blow it, let it dry, and see what it looks like, and get a little more if I need a little more. But if you flood it and you create enough that it actually runs, it can start covering up cracks. So now you're covering up stuff. So use just enough. And let me see, some publications state that base metal should be visible through developer. So we'll put that in here. Base metal should still be visible through developer. So the developer, what does it do? It's kind of a chalky substance. The non-aqueous is a chalky substance. The form A, the powder's a chalky kind of powder form. It all is kind of a white powdery forms in one way or another. So what it does, it's like a blotting action. Because it's this powder, it wants to draw anything out of a discontinuity, so it helps draw out any of the dye. And it also gives you a bit of a contrasting color or something that's not, because it's flat white, doesn't reflect back at you through the black light. So, all right, developer time. And developer time is 10 to 120 minutes. Now that can be a real problem. So they just tell you that. Developer time's 10 to 120 minutes. So you're like, all right, so put the developer on, and somebody calls break time. You're like, sweet, 15-minute break. So you go, and well, because you're an aircraft mechanic, you have a scotch and a cigar, and you have your 15-minute break, and you come back and you're going to look at it. Does that meet the 10 to 120-minute dwell time? Sure.
Yes.
It does. And so you come back, and you have a part. This is your part. And we'll let this be red. I have red. And it looks like this. And you have another one over here that looks like that. Now what do?
You know, there's
Look
a
how
crack.
big those cracks are. We gotta get rid of it.
You have no idea what happened. Why does it look like that? Why does it have this giant plotch?
Too much time for developing.
You
and
can't
blotting
just
out.
walk away from something for, I say, this is me, can't walk away from this stuff for this much time. What I do, you can do what you want. What I do is I watch. And I will sit there and watch it for 2 minutes, I mean a minute or two. You've been doing this whole time. You've been watching it. You've been inspecting it the whole time. So suddenly you get like a little something starts to show up like that. Now what are you going to do? Now you can see it. There's a crack right there, right? And you're like, oh, I can see it. You can like, start inspecting the sides, see what it does, watch it come out. You're like, okay, it started with a very significant looking crack indication at a corner, which makes sense, and then it starts flowing. And then 2 hours from now, it's going to look like this. And so you don't know what you had, because that's what it's going to keep doing. So I say you got to be very careful about 10 to 120 minutes. I think the takeaway from that is you can't apply the developer, look at it for 2 minutes, and then say, hey, it's good. Right? What's the minimum amount of time you have to wait before you can call it good? 10 minutes. So you have to set it aside. Right? And wait. After 10 minutes, take a look at it. Say, I've waited the 10 minutes. 10 minutes, it still look good. And then you're fine. What happens if, why the 120?
Maximum time?
Why maximum time?
Because
Smaller
maybe it can
cracks.
develop later. Like maybe it takes 30 minutes to develop a
Stuff
crack.
starts drying.
Oh.
And so what they're really worried about is you came back 3 hours later and go, oh yeah. I know it doesn't make sense. It's like, well, wouldn't it have bled out and done something? But
Does it ever take like 45 minutes or an hour for that stuff to happen? I mean, at
I've
one
never
point.
waited that long.
Okay, that's it. Okay. I was just saying, man, sitting there watching that thing. for
No,
2
no, I
hours.
don't think so. All right. And then the last step is, not the last step. Next step, officially inspect. So we are inspecting it. When we inspect a part, we have to make some considerations, which I think I'll maybe get back into a little bit more. But one is you better use adequate lighting. What is adequate lighting?
You have enough UV light or visible light or UV light?
Minimum of
100-foot candle.
100 foot candles or 1,000 lux. Well, how do you know if you have 1,000 lux?
Your light meter.
You have a light meter that was calibrated not more than
Years
6
ago.
months ago.
6 months.
Well, what if you don't have a light meter?
Go buy one.
Then you can't do this. You see how everything got to get circular now.
Light
Go
a hun-
stand
light
out in the
100
sun.
candles and
Yeah. So, yeah, sure. You can buy that. It's cheap. But if you're supposed to do it in accordance with, what's that, 1417 or 1714, 1417, and it tells you you have to have adequate lighting and you have a light meter, can you use this stuff? This is where people start getting into themselves into trouble. Because you can buy this, it's cheap, buy it from Spruce, but they don't buy the light meter. So it's like, oops, you're not doing it right. So let's see, yeah, use a minimum of that, and cracks will appear, thin lines, stuff like that. When we're all done with the part, let's say it was not a problem and it is airworthy, what comes next?
Clean.
Clean. This is actually a bigger deal than what it sounds like, because the chemicals can cause corrosion from this process. So we want to get the chemicals off. Can't just say it's good. It's all right if it's a little red and has some white dust on it. So I wrote this note in here just because whatever. Lycoming service instruction 1285 Echo states, that's Lycoming service instruction. Do not use visible dye for these inspections because visible dye penetrant materials have an adverse effect on future penetrant inspections, causing indications to be tightly closed and therefore missed during future inspections. Visible dyes have an adverse effect on fluorescent dyes, causing fluorescence to diminish. So we would not want to do that.
Does Continental have any?
Specifically with Lycoming.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe Continental has something. I just didn't write it.
I actually have a question about that. So type 2 visible dye.
Visible. Yes.
It affects type 1.
Yes.
Would it not be advantageous that, like, if I did a type 2 inspection on something and it had a crack, but like we were talking about, it had something that was acceptable, or
Okay.
would that not still, if I had to do another inspection on it, if I just used type 2, would that not also just work?
If you keep using type 2,
Yeah.
well, yeah, type 2 over type 2 is fine.
Yeah.
That's red over red.
So I was just wondering, it's like,
But here you're in a problem. So let's say you have a Lycoming part, and you decide that before you send it off, which would be common, shipping's expensive. So you've got to bring your crankcase to me. So you have a crankcase, and you know that it tends to crack in the little webs, and so you're like, well, I'm just going to spot check these areas, and if they're good, then I'll send it out to the shop, to me. So you use the red dye, you inspect it, and maybe you kind of might see something, or maybe it's like, nah, I didn't see anything. And now you ship it out to me, and I get it, and there's red dye all over it.
Yeah.
So am I allowed to use type 1 on it?
No.
Which has a much higher sensitivity level. So you use the low sensitivity level, passed it with the low sensitivity, you send it to me. Technically speaking, I guess I should say, I can no longer inspect this because you damaged the part with type.
They want you to do the type 2, but correctly this time.
They want me to do type 1.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
How will you
Thanks,
know?
you sent me an unairworthy part. You made my job so easy.
I know, yeah, I just have your
Here's
red
the
tag.
That'll be $400, please.
Yes.
Does the
400.
Does the type
For the
2
inspection.
Oh, I guess.
Does the type 2 show super well on when you do a type 1 inspection? So how would you know if somebody just said, here, I'll sell you this part, and they washed all the red off and you can't
You
see
wouldn't
it?
know. You'd have no idea.
So there's parts out there that
Maybe.
If you're high enough in the NDT world, you're probably not doing
The
it
level
like
3s
that.
can probably know this.
Yeah.
I have never run into a situation ever where somebody actually said, I'm not touching that, you use the red stuff on it, you know you can't do that. I just don't see that happening.
Practically what has happened, so like if you get something in with that someone used type 2, you're supposed to be doing a type 1 on it with what have you done at least in the past?
Why don't we tomorrow take one of the pistons, it clearly has red dye still coming out of it,
Do
and
type
do
one
it,
on
but
it?
don't dip the piston into the tank. Just dip an acid brush and let's put some on there and just do an experiment, see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Dig.
And we'll know.
Well, I'm just curious what you have done, if at all, in the past, if you encountered that.
Truth, I didn't know this when I was doing it.
Okay.
So honestly, what we were doing, we had a cylinder shop, and imagine how much time it takes to do a cylinder with this stuff. Because the cylinder is half steel, half aluminum. And so the method that was being used was use the spot check, red stuff, and do it right around, turn it upside down, do these spark plugs, openings with the spark, because it cracked from there, and then do the exhaust port where the next crack is likely. And so that's all that was happening. But honestly, you could always see the cracks that came in cracked. I don't think nobody ever said, well, I didn't see the crack till I did that. And the reason why was because it's not very sensitive. So they were just using spot check anyway. Shouldn't have been. Didn't know.
When you were in your shop, did you annotate where cracks typically occurred? Like, oh, in 1,000 crankcases, cracks occurred in this spot on 740 of them.
No, just knew where it was. You just kind of,
You just
it's
knew.
going to crack in that area.
Okay.
It's always in the same spot, all crankcases. They always wanted to crack near the webs,
Okay.
the center supports. You just kind of knew that. I don't know. All right, let's talk about type 1, which is method A. Method A, little a. Method, no, that's not at all what I
Big A.
want to do right. You want to write big A, what the hell? Big A, okay. Form, we'll get to it. Let's see something. Let me put this one. Oh, I do. Should leave that up in my talk, but anyway. Okay. Type 1 method A. This is what we have across the street. Method A. Method A means water washable. All right, so that would be type 1 is fluorescent. Fluorescent penetrant. Method A means water washable. So this is an oil-based penetrant. Oil-based. And when we talked, I forget if I talked about it in class or over there, but can you just wash oil off of something?
No.
No, it doesn't work. So what do we have to have in it? Okay. To make it water washable, the penetrant, the green stuff contains
Emulsifier.
an emulsifier. An emulsifier breaks down the oil and makes it water washable. Yes, we did talk about it, like Dawn and the ducks and all that kind of stuff. Don't use it to wash ducks. That's what I said.
But how are you gonna find the quacks?
Cooper's got that.
That was good though.
That's stolen from someone else in here, so.
That's all you.
All right, steps. Steps. What steps are we gonna do?
Clean the port.
All right. First step is to clean. And how would we clean it?
Well,
With potsy.
A hot seat. All right. What are we not going to clean? And what kind of material are we usually using in aviation when we're doing this procedure?
What, like ferrous metals?
Non-ferrous, aluminum. So we're probably talking mostly about aluminum. Of course, it doesn't have to be aluminum, just to be very clear. It can be aluminum or plastic or copper or bronze or magnesium or titanium, I suppose. Or,
Brass.
huh?
Brass?
I think I said brass, but brass
These are
or
bronze too.
bronze and plastic or ceramic that's been hardened, gold. So everything, unless it's porous, which would be no
Sponges.
sponges, no wood,
wood.
No nuts.
Unfired ceramics.
unfired ceramics, and probably flesh. I don't know.
We could try.
You should try. You can use the red stuff. You have a crack, it just keeps bleeding out red. And stuff.
There you go.
All right. So clean, same procedure as before. The cleaning is no different. So let's put that. No different. No different than what we previously discussed. How about blasting? Can we use a blast cabinet to clean?
If it's a
If you use the
Yeah,
soft
Yeah,
media.
if it's
soft
a
media.
soft.
Soft
line-
media. What are my soft medias?
Walnut.
plastic.
Walnut, plastic. We'll stick
Baking
with that.
soda.
Baking soda. How about glass?
No.
Sand?
No.
Okay.
Apparently, I looked it up, glass is more coarse than garnet, but garnet is cheaper.
Hmm.
It's better for the environment.
Interesting. My experience, the garnet was really harsh.
Most of the garnet is 120 grit, and then they have glass that goes down to 60 grit.
I think we used a lower grit glass and a higher grit garnet. The other way around. So, all right. Okay. Then we were going to, part should be
Allow to dry.
dry. It's like my throat. And dry and between 50 to 125 degrees. Why do I care if it's too cold?
Because it might not be completely dry.
The cracks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
My theory, you don't want it, when it's cold, everything shrinks, cracks will be.
Smaller.
And also, it probably has something to do with the penetrant, doesn't work at certain temperatures.
Wouldn't it I guess it gets hot in the engine anyways. I was gonna say, wouldn't the heat
Oh,
crack?
it doesn't hurt the part,
Yeah, no, I know, I just realized that when I was saying that.
but I think it's more of about where the penetrant was designed to work. When the penetrant gets too cold, it may not work well, flow well, and when it gets too hot, you're getting your flash temperatures and stuff. All right, let's see, apply penetrant. So if we're good, we're going to apply the penetrant. And the methods for applying,
Dip.
this time I have 4, A, B, C, D, dipping,
Spraying.
spraying,
Brushing.
what,
Brushing.
brushing, or
Pouring, yeah.
pouring.
Orange.
I'll put flowing. So yeah, depending on the size of the part, I mean, sometimes you get big crankcases, long crankcases, they won't fit in the dip tank. So, how do you do it?
Spray.
Pour it,
One, the other.
spray it.
Or spray.
Well, dip it in one way, turn it around, dip it in the other way, then you're missing half, maybe a part in the middle. Then what do you do?
Yeah, and
Don't worry about it.
Pour it.
Just set it as it runs. No, then I had a sprayer, or pump sprayer, like spraying weeds. Just use one of those things and just spray it on the part that didn't get it, or stick a brush in there and brush it on. For this method A, I would dip it and then brush it. It would be more of my preference. No, dipping and spraying. Brushing I like to do more for very small parts. When I'm checking a very small area.
Oh, you don't want to cover the whole thing?
Yeah, exactly. There was some inspections I had to do on Cessna 152 propellers a lot, and we had to do a method C with level 4 sensitivity, and so we just bought the small can of it, and you just use a brush and brush it right in the exact spots, because otherwise you'll be wiping for days. So, all right, so now what are we going to do?
Let it
Well.
well.
All right. How long
10 to 30
is our dwell time?
10 to 30 minutes.
All right. Now we have to kind of get away from our spot check. So I may have made a mistake doing this up here and saying, oh, let's just throw in our, type 1 fluorescent. This is really, when I wrote this up here, was all spot check. Follow? That's the red stuff, type 2. So that's where all of this came from. Now I'm getting into our actual aerospace, usable, type 1, method A. This is legitimate stuff now. So now we're following ASTM guidelines. We're doing stuff that can be used on aircraft. So things are going to be a little bit different. So unless otherwise stated, the dwell time is 10 to 120 minutes. And you're going to see that more often, 10 to 120. Why would I do 10 versus 120?
Because if the crack's big.
You would consider the temperature of the part. The warmer it is, the faster you could go. Size of indications you're looking for, the smaller they are, the longer you're going to go.
The whole surface
What-
texture thing too.
Okay, so we have, do I write that here? Yes, I'll write that in here in just a second about that, so thank you for that. But let's say you dip the part, you take it out, and you set it down on the rack so it drains, because it's not drying, it's draining, and it's lunchtime. Like, oh man, I'm going to be back in an hour. Is that cool?
No.
Totally cool.
Oh, yeah, dwell time
Oh,
doesn't.
yeah, I
it-
guess,
Just
yeah.
penetrant dwell time, as long as it doesn't dry. So if it's 120 degrees in the shop, I don't know, maybe I'd want to consider that.
I don't think it would even work.
Yeah,
I would almost prefer it to be in the shop.
It is. So in my cylinder shop, number one, I had a low roof. It was slanted, so on one side of it, it was like here. And so I would be running I'm going to say Ziegler oven because that's back there. So I'm running the Ziegler oven and running so when we do cylinders here next semester, we're going to have a gas-fired oven that heats the cylinders. I had a double. So that'd be 2 cylinders at one time. Those running plus the heater running all the time. So it was pretty warm there all the time. Which was really nice in the middle of winter when you're wearing just short sleeves and everybody else is in the hangar shivering.
Not so much in the hot summer.
Also, it's good to be an engine guy because I have the only air conditioned room too for submarine. So. All right, parts dipped. Parts dipped must not be left. Must not be left in the bath. For more than 1/2 of dwell time. Why is this?
The surface tension thing?
Surface tension thing.
Penetrant will not want to seep in.
Because of surface tension, parts left in the bath have lower surface tension. All right, let me see, I put, dwell time. Dwell time, it's penetrant. Time to seep into the crack. That was obvious, but I'll write it for those of you who are like, wait, I never said that. Longer time. Longer dwell for cold parts or smaller cracks. Give it time to get in there. All right, so we've applied our penetrant. Let's just say we've dipped it in a tank. So we put it in a tank, and we're going to leave it there for 10 minutes. Then what are we going to do?
Pull it out.
Pull it out and do what?
Let it
Dwell
For at
for
least
20
20
minutes.
let it drain.
At least 20.
And dwell, drain. Now it's got to be out and drained for a minimum of.
20.
20.
Is that the way you read that?
Half
Must
the-
not be
half
left
the
in
dwell
bath for
time.
more than
Ten-
half, so.
Minimum of 10 to 20, 10 to 120
If it
minutes.
was in there for 10 minutes, it's got to be there out at least for
If
20.
20
if
minutes
you're
and
gonna
one
dwell
second.
for 10 minutes, it has to be out of the bath for 5 minutes
I would read that more as half and half. So if it's in the tank for 10, it better be out of the tank for
20.
10. 10 here, 10 there,
Oh,
for a total of 20.
Yeah.
Oh.
more than one half the dwell time. So you're
Total-
talking.
a total dwell time.
I don't get that. So parts dipped must not be left in the bathroom more than one half the dwell time. So if the dwell time, if it's dipped for 10 minutes, then the dwell time, that would be half of 20 minutes, which
Yes.
would be the dwell time.
Yes.
So the dip does it count as dwell time or no?
It does, but you need to add that much more. So it can't be more than half of the time. So your dwell time starts the minute it goes into the tank.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
I can see how that'd be confusing.
Yeah.
So if a part goes, if you left it in the tank for 10 minutes, then it's got to drain for
10 minutes.
a minimum of 10 minutes. Because that's a dwell time then of 20 minutes.
So
So
pretty
it's-
much equal amount of time in the bath versus
Minimum.
out. Okay,
Minimum.
minimum.
Okay, next.
Wash the penetrant.
All right, we say it, you are correct, but we say it this way. Excess penetrant is removed. And this washing is done under a black light. Done under a black light. Why under a black light?
You make sure you get it all off.
So you can see what you're doing. This stuff is fluorescent. Sure, you can see it in a visible light, but not real well. But you can really see it under a black light. You see what you're doing. So you're washing it off. And what starts right there is you're washing it off. Your inspection period starts. So again, that's me. So that means when I was doing this, I could not let somebody who didn't know what they were doing rinse parts, because they would be, putting the nozzle too close, using too much water, not paying attention, washing cracks clean, and then I did it, and I'm like, well, I don't see anything. Why? Because that guy just washed everything out. So I want to do my own washing.
It's
So,
clean, sir.
Huh?
It's clean, sir.
Yeah. Took me a long time. Let's see. Use caution. Caution to not wash out penetrant out of cracks. And discontinuity is the proper term, but it takes me too long for discontinuity, so I'm just saying cracks, which is discontinuity. So how do we do that? Well, we are going to use a special tri-cone nozzle. It's not just a nozzle that I picked up at Harbor Freight or Lowe's or something like that, or Home Depot, won't leave them out. It's actually an NDT nozzle that was purchased special with the tank. So it's a tri-cone nozzle, which implies that there must be tri, meaning 3 separate cones. I don't see 3 cones in it, but whatever. But what kind of spray do you think that would give me?
A coarse spray.
A very coarse spray. Why coarse spray?
Because if you have a fine spray, it can get into the cracks and wash out the cracks.
Or big drops.
Or wash out.
So when you are using the tank, and I appreciate that you guys are trying to be very careful about the amount of wastewater generated. Some of you are doing it to a fault, and it's more on me for saying, don't use too much water. I said, back where I worked, we just let it go outside. And it didn't matter. Use as much as you want. So I notice people not squeezing it all the way, but when you don't squeeze the trigger all the way, it's a finer spray. So you got to squeeze it all the way and wash it well. Some little bursts. Just you got to get in there and you got to wash it. But I also do appreciate you not holding it on and how's it? Let's see. We have a max PSI of 40. Max PSI of 40 PSI. So she said max of 40 PSI. Water pressure. We've got a water temp between 50 and 100 degrees. And we are going to keep the nozzle. How far?
8 to 12?
12 inches.
12 inches. Wash 12 inches from the part. It's probably the hardest thing for you guys to do. It's hard for everybody. It's not washing. The first thing I do is get closer. But you got to keep it a minimum of 12 inches. I should minimum. I don't know about a maximum. So should be 12. All right, so we get down there. We've washed it. Now what comes next?
Depends on what form.
Dry.
Oh, very good. Decision point.
Oh, yeah.
We have reached a decision point on developer. We have to decide, do you want a wet or dry developer? Wet or dry developer? Let's see if I can recreate the chart. So we have, starting from the beginning, we had clean. Then we do, what's next?
Clean, dry.
She froze up. Dry, what's next?
Apply penetrant.
Come on, be a nice square. All right. Okay, penetrate.
And you have dwell.
Well, what's next?
Remove excess.
Okay, we'll just
You say
go.
wash.
I'll
I think
put wash, okay.
And then-
Wash.
And then you have.
I'm
your-
sorry, for those of you maybe from not around here, wash, you wash the bike.
Worse.
Where would that be from?
I would say
Oklahoma?
You wash your raimons in the creek.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. What comes next?
Yeah,
this is the
your
decision
dry
point.
point, your decision point.
All right, so we're at decisions. That should make a nice square when I do that, don't you think? I mean, it does it for the circle.
Thought you figured out how to do that.
Decision, all right, so I'm gonna bring that down over here.
That was a
So-
circle over
We're gonna have 3 ways to go. We could put it in the dryer. And then we would put, dry. We'll do this, choice 1,
Form A is your powder.
dry, we'll do Form A, which is dry powder. Or we could have choice 2, which would be dry. And then use non-aqueous, which would be form, D. Now I have to spell aqueous, A-Q-U. Is it E-O-U-S? I mean, there's a whole lot of vowels in there. Or choice 3, which would be
Form B, you're aqueous.
form B, aqueous.
Then dry.
Aqueous and then dry. And then all these come back to here. For dwell. And then inspect. Good? It's actually a good place to take a break. Oh, it's a great time.